I messed up there when I stopped the video. I should have kept it running. Zoom mistake. Okay, anyways, so Lenin's dead. And two men emerge as the future leader of the Soviet Union. One makes sense. It's Leon Trotsky. We all know Trotsky. We talked about him. He's been involved in communism and Marxist communism and socialism since the late 1800s. He was friends with Lenin. He led the revolution attempt in 1905. I mean, the guy had roots in St. Petersburg and in the Soviet Union and in communism. The other guy was a guy named Joseph Stalin. And Stalin is, he's kind of a newcomer to the game. He's from Georgia, which is kind of down there in the Caucasus regions near Armenia. And he had kind of a tough young life. His true name is not Joseph Stalin. I can't pronounce it. But Stalin means steel. So he was like the man of steel. He renamed himself. So here's a politician that renames himself the man of steel. I don't know if that's appealing. I mean, that sounds a little bit like WWE, but who am I to talk? Okay. Lenin had given him power because of his ruthlessness, because of his ability to get things done. But Leon Trotsky was still the mind behind the operation. If it was up to Lenin, Trotsky would have taken over. But he dies kind of quickly, and competition begins. Now, the book doesn't get into this, but I'm going to briefly talk about it. There were four men, actually, who were in possible positions of power. And Stalin, Stalin is ruthless, right? He goes to the two guys that aren't Trotsky, and he knows Trotsky is the guy who should be the next leader, right? And he goes, hey, let's us three take over. Trotsky had this idea where he thought that we should have constant socialist, communist revolutions around the world, that the Soviet Union should be in the business of exporting communism to countries all around the world. And that the only way to make this work, remember, Trotsky is a purist. He's a pure communist, Marxist communist type. The only way to make this work is if there's more than just us. Stalin, he played the moderate. He said, no, not so much. Let's just have communism here. So he goes to these two guys. He goes, we got to get rid of Trotsky. We got to get rid of Trotsky, right? It'll be us three who run the show. And then they do. And then they win. They team up and they kick Trotsky out. Trotsky runs away in fear because he knows he's in trouble here. And he goes to Mexico, where he is found dead with an ice pick in the back of the head. Stalin did it. We think, I mean, it's not official, there's never proof, but and Russian government I didn't really just say that. I am a fan. Please don't be angry at me. But Stalin did it. And he then goes to the other two. There's three, and he goes to one of the two guys. He goes, hey, this guy is really, he shouldn't be in power. Let's us two have power. And they get rid of the other guy, right? They imprison him and lock him up. And now it's just two. And then Stalin takes the other guy out. So Stalin, this guy, he takes full power for himself. He was a ruthless and successful politician, and he gained power. And in 1928, let's just take a look at some of this stuff I found. First off, look at this picture of these guys when they were young. What a bunch of handsome young guys. Huh? Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin. Stalin still had that big Stalin mustache. Really, they look like a boy band. I kid, kind of. So Stalin accuses Trotsky of retreating. And here's Trotsky. This is an old comment from the period. The gravedigger of the revolution. You're going to kill the revolution, Stalin. And Stalin gets together with his other two guys and kicks Trotsky out. There's a lot of question marks. Like, what if Lenin had lived? What would have happened? Would there ever have been this kind of true communism? What if Trotsky had taken over? Then what would have happened? Would there have been more expansion? No one knows, right? But Lenin takes over, and the first thing he does is he initiates what he calls the 5-year plan. And under the 5-year plan, look, Russia has always been behind the rest of Europe. They got whooped by Japan, by Germany in World War I. He goes, we have to increase our manufacturing capabilities. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the crops and I'm going to sell them on the world markets, and I'm going to take that money and I'm going to buy factories. I'm going to take over all the businesses again, like it used to be under Lenin's wartime communism. And I'm going to take every penny of the profit and I'm going to invest in factories that make weapons of war. And we're all going to have to suffer. Every Russian is going to be asked to suffer during this period, but it's going to pay off because Mother Russia is going to catch up. Never again will Mother Russia be humiliated in war like we were in World War I and in the war with Japan. And it works. He kills close to 20 million of his own people. He starves out the farmers. He steals their food. We're going to talk about that in a second, but it works. And in 1937, he had increased Russian steel production by 500%. That's unheard of. After 2 5-year plans, after 10 years, a 500% increase in steel production and manufacturing capabilities. This was successful on the back and on the death of tens of millions of his own people. He makes Russia an equal power with the rest of Europe. Joseph Stalin turns the USSR into a world power while murdering 20 million of his own people. And oh, by the way, he also has a secret police that kills anyone that disagrees with him. He sends 8 million people to the gulags in Siberia who never come back. He doesn't care. He kills people. He starves out 15 million people in the period of collectivization. But look, because it does take huge amount of money to build factories. And in his 5-year plan, he takes every extra penny. He does this thing, and I don't know if you guys know this. My family, my wife is Russian, and her family has apartments in Russia. And I've had students who have from Russia. They have these apartments, and they're like these. I'm gonna find a picture for you. All right, so I just pulled up a picture of some of these apartments. My wife, like I said, my wife's family has some apartments. When you get one for life. It's yours. But they look like this. They're just these plain white, tall apartment buildings, and there's a cluster of them, maybe 5, 6 of them in a row, with a little play area in the middle. And what they say is, hey, everyone gets an apartment. All Russians, free place to live. There are no frills, though. There is no extra. There's not a lot. There's no fancy. No, there's no yard. There's no driveway. There's no duty. This is bare bones minimum living. But everyone lives and has food. He gives food coupons. People can get enough food to survive. I mean, it's not delicious food, but it's enough that you're not going to starve. People in Russia have enough, barely. But because they're all living in squalor, all the profits go to the government, who invest in these factories and these new style of factories that can produce metal and stuff for war. This is a poster from the era. It says 5-year plans. I can't read Russian. I think that's what it says, but that's what it's all about, the 5-year plan. Here's a little slide sheet I found. Look at the improvements that were made in Russia under his 2 5-year plans. Electricity goes from this much kind of electrical production. It goes up 700% in 10 years. Coal goes from 35 to that's 400%. Oil from 400%. Steel, we said, was what is that? 5%? Yeah, by 500%. Russia becomes the world's second largest industrial power in 10 years. New cities, dams, Moscow, underground was built, health service, education, no unemployment. Everyone has a job working in a factory. Everyone has a place to live. No homelessness, no starvation. But people just barely have enough to survive. And they're asked to suffer from Mother Russia, and many do in the cities. But in the farms, it's totally different, okay? The Russians come in and they take over people's farms. 250 million, no, 250,000 small family farms that the peasants had just probably gotten 50 years earlier, 50 to 100 years, are taken from them and are turned into these big government-owned farms. By these people. It's just a picture of them. It's not truly them. You can see here images of the peasants who lived on the farms just scrounging, barely enough to get by. Because what happens is they have to give the majority of their crops to Mother Russia. And they're all left scrounging to barely get by. And a mass famine breaks out. So this is called collectivization. This taking of all the farmland in this period, we historically call collectivization. And if you look here at this map of Russia, okay, here's the Volga River. This is probably Moscow. This is the Ukraine. Here's the Black Sea. There's Crimea. This is down here. This is Armenia and Georgia, right? This is the kind of northern Caucasus region. This is where they took the food from. But this is where the big cities of Moscow and St. Petersburg are. This is where a lot of the factories were. So they stole food from the farms, sold it, and then took that money to build factories up here. So if you lived up here, you probably didn't notice it. You were like, hey, I got an apartment, I got food. It may not be good living, but I'm living. Russia's never been a fancy place. But if you live down here, let's look at some of these numbers. Oh, here's another. Oh, no, here's an interesting map. This is the population decrease, okay? Not because they moved, because they were starved out. Between 1929 and 1933, 4 years, 25% of the population is killed in much of southern Russia, specifically in the Ukraine, okay? Which, if you remember, during the Russian Civil War, the Ukrainians wanted their independence. So some people think Stalin was just getting back at them. This is down here in the Caucasus regions. They wanted their independence. Maybe Stalin was getting back at them too. But either way, we see in 1 year, 10 million peasants died of starvation. 26 million family farms were taken by Stalin over this period. Anyone who resisted was sent to forced labor camps. 8 million people were arrested and sent to the gulags in Siberia. But it worked. But Stalin made Russia a world power. Stalin also overturned a lot of progressive reforms, like giving women equal rights. And he went back to saying women belong in the house, have babies. Just like Hitler's going to do, just like Mussolini did. Mussolini did it kind of the Catholic churchy way. Stalin's going to do it the ruthless way. Hitler's going to do it like, hey, have babies make Germans proud because Germans are the best. Germans are the best. But in all of these programs, women are asked to give up their rights and to become birthers. Although, I'm doing a little foreshadowing, I know there's a long lecture. In World War II, Russian women fight well. And I don't know if there's a difference in the battlefield, but they make a difference. Russian women are tough. And now Italy is controlled by a fascist leader. Russia is gone from communist to socialist to deadly communist, Stalinist communist. People think, oh yeah, Marxist socialism is what Stalin did. No, what Stalin did was different. It was ruthless. And it was wildly successful. Now Sedung's going to see that and think to himself, yeah, I think I can do that too.